Hello and welcome back to the Prosperity by Design podcast. I'm your host, Fallon. It's like Jimmy Fallon, but it's my first name. All right. So today's podcast, I actually want to cover something to do with coaching crew. And it is relevant to business and content and money and all this other stuff that we talk about here on the podcast. And basically, I got 2 contracts last year, one for each season. And so this year I was kind of expecting a contract because that's what happened last year. So I was like following the pattern and the pattern didn't happen. So that's okay. I just was kind of thrown because I got an email saying that coaches will be rostered for the fall season. And so within literally a week of the start of the season, I was told what group I am going to be coaching this season. And the reason why it's so relevant for this podcast is 3 reasons, which I will be explaining in depth and getting into very, very shortly here. But to finish out and complete this story, just know that when I was rostered for what group I will be taking this year, I was a little thrown. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I want to record a podcast about what's been happening in the last couple of days of practice here. We started practice Monday of this week. By the time of this recording today is August 30th. So we started practice on the 28th, and we've had practice every day since Monday. And so this season I was rostered to handle the younger group of athletes, like the youngest group of athletes. And I'm normally in the JV group of athletes where the kids they know what they're doing, they have developed more than a novice, but they aren't quite at that varsity level yet, so they aren't quite as fast or as strong or as performing as high as you would want for your varsity rowers to perform. And so I was a little thrown because I was like, last year I was taking care of the JV kind of section, what happened? So I've been with the youngest group of athletes for the last, 3 days, and it has brought a couple of things up to me that I didn't really realize before, because like I said, I've been so involved with JV athletes or varsity athletes that I really haven't been around the novices or the beginners, so to speak. So I'm going to break down these 3 things starting now. The first thing that I've noticed that I think is really important to take into account when we get into our money or our business or our inner work, our personal growth, whatever it is you want to call it, is beginner energy. There really is something about beginner energy and kind of having that naivete that, I don't know that it's ignorance or arrogance. It's just they don't know any better, and they're here to have fun, and they're here to, explore and learn if this is something that they're going to be interested in continuing moving forward. And they're like fresh, and I think that's really important because it keeps things exciting and it keeps the journey alive. It keeps the momentum alive on the journey as well. And that beginner energy, when you first get into something, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great. And then after a little while, it kind of fades, and it, sometimes it leads to people not carrying through and giving up, or, maybe they quit or what have you. But there really truly is something exciting about the beginner energy that I've been appreciating when I go to coach in the afternoons. So I think taking that perspective, that beginner perspective, and applying it to your business or your journey, your money journey, or whatever, is only going to help you, because it's going to bring that momentum and that excitement. Something about tapping into it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what it is, but I'm watching these kids. I'm like, wow, they just are so stinking excited every day to get out on the water. It's great. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that they listen so well. I feel like once you get to a certain point of being around the sport, or being around anything for that matter, you just start to like take things for granted and foo-foo things off, or poo-poo things off, whatever you want to call it. And you're like, yeah, I already know that, or I already know that, right? I've already done that. I've already seen that. And like, you kind of haven't, like there are 1,000,001 plus infinite different scenarios that can happen in this very moment right now. For all we know, I could start speaking Spanish in the next 5 seconds. I'm not going to speak Spanish because I don't really know how, but you understand what I mean. There's an infinite possibility of what could happen in the very next moment. And the only moment that we have is the present moment. And even though we understand what the past is and what the future is as concepts, that doesn't mean that we're living the past or living in the future, because we're not. We're living in right now. And these kids, they listen so much better than the JV kids. And I think part of it is because the JV kids, they've come into it, they've done all the things, they're like, yeah, I already know this, instead of having that open mind that these beginners have, that beginner mindset, right? And continuing to listen and continuing to ask questions and continuing to be like curious about what's going on. And they just kind of, like I said, poo-poo things off because they already know this and they've already done this. And don't get me wrong, there is a certain factor of, yeah, you've been around here more, you're a little bit more experienced to be able to handle a boat and move it around and maneuver it, but just because you've been taking more strokes doesn't mean that you don't know what's going to happen the next time that you go to take a stroke. For all you know, you catch a crab. I remember when I was rowing in my national championship race, I caught a crab in the last 250 meters of the race. Did I sit there and complain and whine about how much I knew that I shouldn't catch a crab? No, I just did what my coach told me to do when I was a novice. Recover. The one thing you have to focus on when you come to a dead stop in a race, or when you come to a dead stop in a piece, is get the boat moving again. So yeah, do I still take that story with me? Of course I do, because it's a once in a lifetime story. You're in the biggest, race of your life, and you do a completely novice move. It's unbelievable. But you don't just sit there and complain or get upset. You got to just get the boat moving again. Recover quick and fast. Don't think about what just happened. It's in the past. The past is in the past. Focus on what you can do right now. And that listening component is super refreshing. It's so refreshing. It makes me so happy and so excited. But this third thing that kind of comes up at the same time as these two happy, more exciting things is that you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And sometimes that can take you off guard, that weak link. And when you're coming from more experience and you're coming from those kids who've been around the sport more and who've been maneuvering boats very efficiently, when you get to the group of younger kids that aren't as competent, you forget. And so it doesn't help them learn if there are, any kinks in the chain, so to speak. So that was something that happened today that it just completely threw me, because I've been so used to athletes who can lift a boat up and put it in the water by themselves. And I was handling something with 3 other kids, and I was getting them into the launch so that we can get ready to go out in the water. And all of a sudden, half the boat's up in the air and half the boat's like down in the water. And I'm like, oh my God, just lift the boat up. And there's a lot of screaming going on, and there's just panic, and the kids who had the boat high up in the air bring the boat down at the same level, and then everybody just drops in the water. And, it's not necessarily the best recipe for success, but again, every day is a different day. There's infinite possibilities that can be made and that can happen in any moment in time, and it's a lesson. It's a lesson to, continue to be aware and to not take the older kids for granted, and to stay down and around so that they know that if help is needed, that there is help there, and that if there are more important things to be paying attention to, that's what we pay attention to, instead of, splitting our mind to the lesser important tasks. So it has been quite a week, and it's only been 3 days to start the season. And I wanted to share that on the podcast, because that is something that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about in the interwebs. And I have heard some talk about beginner energy, but I really haven't heard much about, keeping that open mind and listening, and, not taking things for granted, and to really keep that awareness of things that are going on around you, because literally anything can happen. And yes, I am a little down on myself about it, because I should have known better, but I have been so in a groove of just like, okay, they're taking care of that, I can go take care of this. And so it was on me. And what am I going to do? I can learn from today and make sure that tomorrow it doesn't happen again. And that's all that I can really do. So that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for continuing to tune in. As always, if you could leave a review, it would be greatly appreciated, and goodie boxes will be sent to the first 50 listeners who leave a review. The Seasons of Business is up and running as of this upcoming Friday, and I am really excited about creating that video library and all of the cool things that are going to come with it. So be sure to check that out in the link down below in the show notes. Can't wait for you to hear what's up next. I think I have a couple of guest episodes that I really do want to air on human design and on, your online business journey. And I'm probably going to get them up in early September. So be sure to keep an ear out for them, because they are up and coming on the podcast. So thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you later. Okay, bye.